age of hide-and-seek horror gaming that put the survival horror genre in a dark place, there are only a handful of these games that I can still enjoy in recent days. I am personally tired of horror games that don't feature any sort of combat, because they lack the motivation of being replayed over and over again. However, that is not the case with the game that I'm going to talk about today. From the developers of that innovative side-scrolling indie game Limbo, here comes its spiritual successor released 6 years later. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna be talking about one of, if not, my favorite indie game of all time. Inside, made by the Playdead Studio, released in 2016. Wait, that was 9 years ago? Holy shit, I'm getting fucking old. After being so overwhelmed and disappointed with the Alone in the Dark 90s trilogy, I figured it was time for me to talk about something that I love. I am finally happy to be here and share with you some information that you probably didn't know about this masterclass of a game. Before we begin the retrospection, as always, I'm gonna give you some small information on the development history. I'm not gonna talk about all the details because most of them contain spoilers of the game's final chapter. So I decided to save some of them for the retrospection chapter in this video. Without further ado, let's get started with the video. After the highly success of Limbo in 2010, Playdead already started on their new project, and their goal was to go for something similar to Limbo, but much crazier and weirder, and go full 3D. While Limbo actually used a custom game engine made by Playdead themselves, they decided to use the Unity engine this time around, for the purpose of reducing the workload for their employees. And I can assure you, what I'm about to show next is gonna blow your mind. According to a former staff member named
Peter Buchhardt,
Inside was originally going to be something completely different than what we actually got. It was supposed to be set in space, well, sort of. It will be designed 2D just like Limbo, and it will feature gameplay elements like shooting a gun with one bullet and throwing a grenade. It wasn't gonna be an action game like Contra, for instance. They just wanted to use these elements to give them opportunities for different puzzle designs. Unfortunately for him, the director of Limbo,
Arndt Jensen,
didn't feel like this was the right approach. So in the end, they dialed back and chose to use the exact same template from Limbo, having a little boy roaming around in different cozy places. But this time, they had to put a twist to it in order to create its own identity. And let me just tell you this right now. They made the right decision with this direction, because Inside is one of the best video games I've ever played, and I'm gonna tell you why in the next few minutes. If you haven't played this game already, I implore you to stop the video here and check this game out, because you will have the best immersive experience you will ever get from a 2D platformer. Alright, without wasting any more time, let's get started with the retrospection on this masterpiece. The game starts with a boy sliding down the hill, and you get to control him right away. Remember when I said in my previous review that when you start a new game in Alone in the Dark 3, you just jump straight into gameplay? Same thing applies here, just much quicker. Kind of a coincidence that I chose to review this game after this one. Just like Limbo, Inside plays almost the same as you would expect in a 2D game. The gameplay is limited to moving just left and right, you can jump and interact with puzzle pieces throughout the game. Despite having 2D controls, the whole setting of the game is actually rendered 3D, and it features a lot of 3D elements to the puzzles and objects, even if your character only has 2 directions. I gotta say, this game looks absolutely gorgeous. For a game that came out in 2016 and was made in a game engine that remains standard for the industry, Inside is visually outstanding, and it still holds up to this date. I think everyone agrees that the strongest point in this game is the atmosphere, and it helped me just wanna finish this game in one sitting. It's also very well optimized. I didn't encounter any glitches, frame drops, or texture popping throughout my playthroughs on this game. How Playdead managed to create such a finished product in an engine that almost everyone uses during game design college is way beyond me. With the gameplay and the graphics out of the way, let's jump into the story, if you can call it that. Right at the start of the game, you can already spot a very small Easter egg that everyone missed in their first playthrough. If you zoom very closely on the ground here, you can see the silhouette boy from Limbo. Very clever detail there, Playdead. So this little boy is running away from a strange group of people through the woods, and the players are already asking what the hell is going on. Here's the only true answer to this. I don't know. Insight is not the type of game that will tell you what is actually happening within the plot. So we'll just go through how it's presented in gameplay. The boy sneaks past these guys, and you can already notice that these fellas are wearing masks, which could indicate that they are part of a cult or something. So anyways, the boy goes on a stealth mode, and this faction is so desperate to kill you that they send dogs to do their job. The dogs do such an amazing job at creating tension. They really make you feel like you are in danger, and you run away from them a few times throughout this game. The boy manages to lose his stalkers through this river, and he reaches a pig farm full of dead pigs. I forgot to mention that Inside doesn't feature any loading screens, surprisingly. If you manage to beat this game in one sitting without dying even once, this game will never fade to black while finishing a certain level. The camera will remain seamless and continuous without a single cut, just like God of War 2018 and Dead Space Remake. So yeah, Playdead did this first, not Santa Monica. The boy ends up in a farm, and he gets pursued by this particular pig who has a worm stuck up his ass. You wouldn't like where this is going. This worm is very similar to the one in Limbo. They control whatever living being they attach themselves into. You can easily avoid the pig's attacks by jumping over it, and you do so until you trick it to knock itself out. After doing that, you have to pull the worm out of its butt. Jesus! Yeah, this game is not for kids. It is rated M for mature after all. With the worm out, the pig becomes conscious, and you use it to reach this helmet device. The boy attaches himself to the helmet, and it gives me control of this particular zombie? No, that's too cliche. I'm just gonna call them puppets, because why not? These people are mindless anyways. The more ambiguous this game gets, the more it gets interesting, I assure you. Like I said before, this game takes advantage of the 3D environment to make clever puzzles, like using these puppets in the background to help you make progress, and it's amazing. So apparently, these puppets used to be normal people before some corporation made some weird experiment on them to take their consciousness away. I mean, in the next few minutes, you end up in a small town populated with these guys, and it seems like you became a target to become one of them. There is this amazing section in which the boy accidentally ends up in a crowd full of controlled puppets, and you have to stay in line and mimic their movements in order to blend in and avoid getting killed. Look at these people in the background. There are also children there, and they all wear these yellow masks. That changes everything, because this could definitely be more of a cult rather than a corporation. Anyway, you continue further escaping this strange faction, avoiding dogs, doing more puzzles, and you end up riding a submarine. This is totally new because it was not a thing in Limbo. You can't even swim in that game like you can here. During the submarine section, you encounter this strange naked long-haired mermaid child that stalks you underwater and wants to kill you. I can't make it clear if it's a girl or a boy, but it appears to be the same height as your main character. Also the same age, maybe? You can avoid it by flashing with the light, by the way. Further along the way, you continue your adventure routine and solve more puzzles on your way. You guys might think that I call this game repetitive, but that's not true. I'm just gonna talk about the most interesting parts of the game and leave out the ones that are less impressive or just plain boring. Quality over quantity. One puzzle that stood out to me the most is this part, where you happen to wear this helmet the whole time, and you use it to become friends with these puppets around to different parts of this area. Yay! With this group assembled, you press this platform along with them to open this giant door, and you leave your friends behind. We are now reaching probably the most unique level in the game, the shockwave section. In this area, you have to pretty much just stay in cover to avoid being torn to shreds by this impulse that explodes in the background every 6 seconds. According to the composer of this game,
Martin Andersen,
dying at this part makes it sound like a music pattern.
Og den eksplosion kommer hver 6. sekund, og det bliver nærmest sådan et stykke musik. Det er sådan en rytme, som du kommer ind i. Det er ikke blevet ødelagt af, at du døde. Det er nærmest bare blevet federe af det.
Once we are done with this godforsaken area, we meet up with this mermaid again, It is unclear if this is the exact same creature from before, because this one, we locked her out to prevent her from following us. Sure, she might have gotten around, but here, she appears to be unconscious before waking up to stalk us. Either way, the boy fails to climb up this certain platform, he falls into the water, and he gets dragged down by the mermaid. No, this is not game over, it's actually part of the game's script. The mermaid keeps dragging the boy underwater until she happens to plug this specific cable into the boy's chest. And guess what? It gave him unlimited oxygen to breathe forever underwater. So, two questions were raised here. First off, was the mermaid trying to help us all along? Second, is the boy even a real person or is he actually a robot?
Your guess is as good as mine.
You know what? That's the least interesting part. What really caught me off guard is the existence of this upside down pool of water in the next area. Look at this. This is so confusing yet so visually outstanding. It makes me not want to answer questions anymore.
What?
Finally, the boy ends up in a facility filled with people who don't seem to be part of the same faction of folks wearing these masks, judging by the fact that they aren't hostile towards you. Again, very ambiguous. We approach this group of scientists and employees who are watching something behind this glass chamber, and we don't know exactly what it is. I mean, the boy does, but we, the players, do not because the game doesn't pan over. The boy intends to get inside this chamber, and he does by going through this hole from underneath, which strips all of its clothes. Well, this is awkward. The boy swims further, and he discovers the Huddle, a giant blob creature filled with conjoined human bodies and limbs. The boy tries to free it from its restraints, but he gets sucked into the creature once you release the third cable. And guess what? You became the blob. So Inside was like a platforming adventure in a quiet world for the past few hours. Then it goes from 1 to 100 in a matter of seconds at this point. Now that we are here, let's talk about the Huddle and how Playdead came up with this character during development. The Huddle is a creature that Playdead had in their minds right from the start. According to its animator,
Andreas Norman,
he took 3 major inspirations for the creation of this character. The first one is the aggressive behavior from this particular creature in the anime film Princess Mononoke.
The way it scrambles around, its aggressiveness, and the way it morphs to sort of accommodate its mission. If an arm or hand or a leg is needed somewhere, it can easily just pop it out somewhere.
The second is the squishy physics from the main character of the video game, Gish.
Which, it sort of looks like a tiny, charming Huddle. If you put on arms and legs and general disgust, you might.
And finally, just the general crowd surfing in real life.
For the actual Huddle, but maybe more for the way arms and legs should behave, where you have all these individuals in the crowd sort of serving a common goal of moving this crowd surfer around.
Many people believe that the blob was animated very well by the developers' hands, but that's not really the case. The blob was animated through a custom physics simulation with a special model created by Thomas Croak. Playdead wanted to make sure the Huddle would have the sense of body movement and physicality transited to the player's immersion within the character, and they delivered for sure. The way they animated this creature can be very tricky to say the least. On one hand, the whole body is very physics programmed, while the leg models actually use preset animations. Same with the arms that are obviously used to grab objects. Also, the skin of the Huddle was done with the help of art sculptures created by John Isaacs. And finally, the vocal and body sounds made by the Huddle itself were performed by a Danish-Austrian group named Signa. I tried to learn about this certain faction online, but unfortunately, I couldn't find any more information about them. They don't even have a Wikipedia page. It really sucks, but what can I do? Overall, the Huddle is probably the best indie character design I have ever seen in the indie space. The devs did an outstanding job with the development of it, and it just gives me another reason to praise this game to death. With all the interesting details out of the way, let's finish up the story. So the boy gets inside the creature, and all of a sudden, you start a series of rampages throughout the facility. People die on its way, some are trying to put a stop to it, you crash through the floors, and some savages choose to watch the disaster rather than running away for their lives. By the way, when you crash through the floors, you end up in this hill structure chamber which looks very familiar. You should keep this scenery in your mind. During the cafeteria part, the Huddle enters an office and we meet the CEO of this corporation. I don't know if it's personal for the boy from the inside, but the Huddle rages towards this guy and we kill him by crushing him during a fall.
Sweet brutal revenge.
For them anyways. By the way, did you know that you can actually spare this guy? Just wait a little bit longer and he will move out of the way. So yeah, you can actually be a good guy in this situation. This was very new to me when I was doing research on this game. The creature moves forward, going in different places without worrying about anything else, and people in the background actually realize that the blob itself has a mind of its own. So they actually try to help it reach a certain location. And it was all just a trap. They trap the Huddle inside this water tank and it manages to escape. There's no one else around the next area, and the last thing we do is bash through this wall. We are finally outside under the sunlight, and the camera slowly pans backwards. Everyone, including myself, thought it was gonna answer what the hell was going on throughout this game, and what was gonna happen with the blob onward. But nope, the game will just roll the credits on us. Played it, you bastards! Never change. And that was the main campaign of Insight. We're not done yet, because this game has a secret ending. Throughout this game, you can find these orb devices in secret areas, and you have to disable them. There are 13 of these in total, and once you turn them all off, go back to the cornfield level and you find this very hidden trapdoor that leads to a secret bunker. In this bunker, you approach a vault door that can be opened with this lever in a specific order. I have no idea how someone managed to actually learn the code for this ending, because this puzzle is very clueless. You get inside the vault, you walk through this very long dark hallway, and you come across a room with a bunch of screens attached to this mind control device. You unplug this particular socket on the right wall, the electricity goes down, and the boy becomes motionless. And that's it. This ending changes everything in terms of the story. There are many theories you can read on the internet, but the one that stands out the most is the one that tells us that the boy was mind controlled the whole time. This vault appears to be the core of all the mind control connections throughout the game. And pulling this cable out puts an end to not just the boy himself, but also the puppets and the Huddle itself. And no, the boy is not a robot, because he bleeds when he dies.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Before we end the retrospection, let's talk about the things that were cut from the game. Obviously, because I do not own the footage of these deleted scenes, I have to put the credit to the owner of the video on the screen. I'll put the link in the description. In the first scene, we see the boy having some strange moles attached to his head, which causes it to explode. These were probably some sort of enemy type that couldn't make it into the final cut. In the second scene, we see the Huddle rampaging through more office spaces in the facility. Honestly, I wish they didn't cut this because I love making mess in video games. The third scene shows the Huddle going through a flooded place where he gets captured with his cable restraints and he gets flushed in this pool of water. Was this the original idea of how the Huddle would get lured and captured by these people? Both moments look pretty similar though. And finally, the last scene cut from the game shows the boy being lost in this big ass crowd of mind controlled puppets. This is the one that actually upsets me the most for being cut, because it has the best idea of a claustrophobic level. You cannot even see yourself in the crowd unless you jump. I wish Playdead never cut this one. Alright, so that was Inside. I still don't know what's going on, but I still love it. Inside is a visual masterpiece. I went into this game with zero expectations, and even if a lot of questions remained unanswered in terms of the story, I just couldn't stop being amazed by its art style, the atmosphere, the pacing, and the smooth performance. Again, I still cannot believe this game was made in Unity, and I did have game projects and applications made in Unity back in my college years. This is just proof that the value of a good game project isn't made by its engine, but by a human's mind. So yeah, fuck everyone who thinks game development and art should be replaced with AI. They don't even have a good example of something superior than a game like Inside. This is honestly one of the only games that I would actually consider perfect. Granted, it's not flawless objectively because it does have a few things the players might not be a fan of. Like it has no replayability and the puzzles weren't too hard to figure out. Games don't have to be replayable for them to be good, if it manages to give you a good time in the end. And the puzzles? Again, they aren't the most complex, but they still require you to think. If you actually use the guide for one of them, you should be ashamed of yourself. Just kidding. But yeah, personally, I think there's nothing wrong with Inside. Even if I try my best to detect any issues, I just can't think of any. This game did its job for what it wanted to be and what it wanted us to experience. I think the only reason you wouldn't like this game will be its ambiguous storyline, which is okay. But in my opinion, Playdead made a perfect game, and I think you already know what my final verdict is gonna be. So if you are a fan of the horror-themed platformer genre with mind-thinking puzzles, Inside will be the first one for me to recommend. It's not the scariest game ever made, but for what it tries to be, there is just nothing to complain about. This game is an approved masterpiece. Before we end this video, there is only one question that I am desperate to have an answer to. What the hell happened to Playdead? Ever since they released Inside back in 2016, they remained quiet for the last 9 years. The only thing we know is that the ex-co-founder of the studio,
Dino Prati,
left the company to co-found another one called Jumpship, the studio behind the video game Somerville, where he worked as a producer. Also, if you go on Playdead's website, the first thing you see is a screenshot of their next project, which is gonna be a sci-fi game. But other than that, they have been avoiding publicity for years. They don't have to give us an update on their next project. But my god, stop staying true to your company name, Playdead. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I apologize if I take too long to upload on the channel, but I don't want to rush my content. And I intend to do whatever it takes for you to learn new information about your favorite horror games. If you want to see me cover more horror games in the future, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel for the support. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.